HB1121, and we have a substitute before us for House Bill 1121. And we have a motion to adopt the substitute. All those in favor, please respond by saying aye. Okay, the substitute is properly before us.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And those of you who know my voice, I picked this up last night, so please bear with me if you would. I bring to you House Bill 1121, which you now have before you in the form of a substitute. And the reason I bring this to you is I have been very interested in these voting issues, and particularly the process of voting by absentee, simply because, as you know, I spent 30 years in an Air Force uniform. And for 28 of those years, 7 presidential elections, I voted solely because of my travels around the country, around the world, by absentee ballot, and always doubted whether or not, questioned whether or not my ballot and my wife's ballot was being counted, to be quite frank with you. That's why the very first bill that I carried in 2010 and was signed by the governor was a bill to accelerate the due date when local registrars had to postmark absentee ballots to foreign deployed military personnel. Accelerated it to 45 days so that they would have adequate time to participate in the democratic process. So that's why I bring this bill to you, the primary reason. The secondary reason is that there has been considerable public play of late in the lead up to the last general election in Virginia about this very permissive process by which an individual can simply type Joe Jones in a block that clearly says signature. And to a reasonable person, that means a red ink cursive signature. That is a reasonable requirement. And that is really what I'm trying to get to with this bill. To call it an electronic signature is incorrect. An electronic signature is one who spent 9 years, 8 years at the Pentagon doing electronic signatures. Those are encoded, encrypted, and technologically sophisticated processes by which you can determine the individual who is rendering that paperwork is in fact who they say they are. And so therefore, I'm very concerned about this, the capacity to type one's name in a block and call it a signature. It is not. It is a type name, period, dot, end of discussion. So that is where I'm trying to go with this bill. There are folks in the room who are going to speak to both sides of the issue, and I will defer to them. We have had a dialogue with the State Board of Elections, who yesterday, with the substitute, flagged a couple of issues, such as we cite in there a DMV issued ID, and I'll let them speak to that. I'll step aside. And there are broader forms of ID that are permissible. And so for that reason, I bring you House Bill 1121, and I'm very concerned about this issue about signatures.
Just clarify, the only ID that would be allowed under your application form would be the one from the Department of Motor Vehicles under 109, 110, or is there another place?
And that's what appears there. And I'm a little uncomfortable trying to speak on behalf of the Board of Elections. They're here, they will speak to it. I believe that it needs to be broadened to reflect those permissible IDs that are now in use, which include some non-DMV issued IDs.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak for the bill? Please state your name.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Bill Card. I'm a resident of Dumfries, Virginia. I'm here to speak in favor of the bill because of the impact that it's had on Prince William County. I'm the chairman of the Republican Committee in Prince William County, and when this started, we were kind of alerted to the fact that we were receiving many more absentee applications than had been generally received in the past. And it turned out that the 36th Senate District in particular in Prince William County were disproportionately affected by the implementation of this absentee ballot system. Like Delegate Anderson, I would say that I'm a fan of absentee ballots, don't get me wrong. My first ballot was submitted absentee, and for the 22 following years that I was in the Marine Corps, I voted absentee. However, I think what we have here is the fact that the unintended consequences of the application of technology to this process has gotten way out in front of our ability to verify the integrity of the voting system and to validate that the person who submits that ballot is actually the person that should be voting. These ballots are treated markedly different than any other ballot that is submitted by a ballot voter in any election. And this created a series of decisions that were made in Prince William County because our chairman of the electoral board stepped forward and asked to scrutinize these ballots to take reasonable measures to determine that those voters were actually the people that had submitted those ballots. Decisions by the State Board of Election, our local registrar, and removed any rational address of those ballots, and they virtually became a highway right into the ballot box, and that is terrifying for us. After the fact, we took a look at the voting materials, and there's reason for us to believe that about 7% of those ballots shouldn't have been accepted.
Who made that determination?
That was the chairman of the electoral board had announced in a meeting prior to the election that he intended to do that, and they did. They took a look at that with volunteers, and they.
So who has the expertise to go through and look at someone's signature to determine that it's invalid?
Actually, the electoral board took a look at one of them and determined that it was invalid, but this was an investigation to determine whether or not there was reason to look at this as a problem.
So why was the 36th senatorial district targeted for this?
I honestly don't know. It was the number of the original, when it was unusual how many ballots started or ballot requests started in the time period. It was sourced. It was determined to be sourced from Delegate Sorrellville's official House of Delegates site. He hosted a come here, get your absentee ballot. You can do it a year in advance, and much of the traffic came from there. In my opinion, that's also a problem in that I requested my ballot from Delegate Sorrellville's site, and 3 days later I received a letter from his election office that thanked me for my vote for him.
If we're going to do this, why didn't we, if we want to do this with some degree of integrity, why didn't we look at other districts as well to compare signatures?
I would gladly, please look at these other districts. The reason I'm the chairman of Prince William County, I have no authority outside that Prince William County. Our electoral chairman became concerned, rightfully so, in my opinion. When I went to RPV to seek guidance from the council, they were already aware that there was an unusual amount of activity in the 36th Senate District. It was disproportionate to other Senate districts, and that just, and.
This means that the candidate is very aggressive in recruiting, people to vote. That's all
It
that
could,
means.
it could be, and I don't think that the fact that they were successful, but there were a number of flags for us. We had candidates that were going to our Board of Elections, our local registrar, to see, and this is typical, but I'm sure you all do it, to get, to find out who was asking for an absentee ballot, and we found out at one point that we became alarmed because they were coming in as streets. And so I think they were doing it in conjunction with a walking program as well.
So, all right, we've got a lot of other bills that we need to hear.
Okay.
Delegate Cole, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, I just want to kind of follow up on his statements there. My understanding is that people received absentee ballots when they said they never requested them. And there also was concern about the large submission, you know, within just a few minutes of all from the same, you know, ISP or whatever, the same internet address. So there are, I think, indications of something not quite right about it. I personally think we've made it so easy to request an absentee ballot that it just invites fraud. And I would make a motion, and I will say that we have another bill dealing with the signatures in another subcommittee. And what I'd like to do is forward both of them to the full committee so that we can decide which approach we want to use. I think that's Delegate Lamonti's bill, Nick. So I'm going to move that we report the substitute.
Second. Madam Chair. Well, I just want to make sure that, if we fix this, so that we do all the things that are in this bill, that it's okay to go door to door and ask people if they want to vote absentee. What's wrong with that? I want to know what's wrong with getting everybody to vote who's a citizen, wants to vote, you know. And so, once we do this, everyone will be absolutely sure that we've got real voters here, and we'll get as many people to go vote as possible with your new system. Is that okay with you guys?
Madam Chairman, I have no objection to that whatsoever. I encourage people to vote, to exercise their
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that.
Whether it's in person or whether it's by one of the absentee methods, I always encourage, and I carry absentee ballots with me. But we are in a situation because no signature is required in a block that says signature, and anyone who speaks the English language can understand the meaning of that simple word, can submit it on behalf of somebody else. It doesn't pass through the hands of the intended voter. That's where I'm concerned and want to address it. I spent a lot of years in a lot of countries that use loosey-goosey, to use a technical term, process, and I do not want us to embrace that here in the Commonwealth.
Just a problem comment. First of all, I know Senator Sorrell, and I know that he's in a very aggressive campaign, and to suggest that he would do something inappropriate is very disturbing to me, first of all, because I know him. Secondly, if you wanted to bring credibility to what you're doing, I would have also compared signatures from other districts within Prince William County as well. And thirdly, what is going to be the physical impact to our county when we have to hire people to come in and to attest to these signatures? And who are the experts that's doing this? To select the 36th senatorial district to be the basis for this bill, I think is highly inappropriate.
Madam Chair, in closing, because I know you do have other business on the docket, let me just say, for Rich Anderson, a patron of this bill, I've heard a lot of names and districts mentioned. For me, this has nothing to do with now Senator Sorrell's district. It has nothing to do with the Jaffe narrative that we've heard. It has to do with what I have read in the media and seen about this whole process. And I was surprised when this bill was in the hopper and subject to public scrutiny, how many registrars called me from around Virginia? And I'm talking more than a dozen in all three corners of Virginia who said, you're on the right track. So I will leave you with that.
Is there an amendment to the bill? Mr. Chairman?
Delegate Sickles.
Well, if this is what we're going to vote on, I would urge you to vote no, because the patron acknowledged that it doesn't cover all forms of ID. That was in his testimony. So I would urge you to vote no unless we're going to amend the bill at this point.
Delegate Sickles, that was the discussion, that there's another bill as well, and we would discuss that in committee.
Madam Chair, I think that other bill had to do with the signature comparison. This bill says that you have to have a Virginia driver's license or a special card issued by EMV in order to fulfill. So he admits this, so I think we need to amend that, or vote no.
If we have a second, all those in favor, please respond by saying aye. All those in favor of recording, please respond by saying aye.
Madam Chair, I just want to say I'm still going to vote no because that is not legislative language. I don't know what that is, what Mr. Chairman just said. So for now, I'll just vote no and wait to see the language on the floor. Maybe I'll change my vote. Thank you.
We'll have the bill before us in full committee on Friday morning. This will be an updated agenda. Delegate Anderson?
And I'm amenable to working those issues, not only with the committee, but with the State Board of Elections, to address the concerns that the delegate has expressed.
We're reading them back to us. You have it ready? Okay. So are we on line 110?
Madam Chair, the amendment on line 109 after have strike a Virginia driver's license through the end of that motor vehicle, and we'll put in have one of the forms of identification specified in subsection B of section 24.2-643.
All those in favor of accepting this, please respond by saying aye. Take a second to report the amended substitute. All those in favor, please respond by saying aye. All opposed? So we are now on Delegate Rasool, House Bill 82.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, members of the committee. HB 82 looks to lower the